This is Forte, and welcome to the Forte Effect, the place where technology, creativity, and the future of work meet without pretending we're not human while building what's next. Today's conversation is deeply human. We're talking about grief, rest, healing, and what it really looks like to keep moving forward when life changes unexpectedly. I'm honored to be joined by Val today. Val is a childhood friend from elementary school. Val, thank you for being here today. So, Val, how are you arriving, as we would probably ask in the power bubble? How are you arriving today?
Today, I am arriving exhausted, but grateful and very hopeful.
Exhausted, grateful, and hopeful. As we get ready to center this conversation, background context for our audience. Val's parents, they passed within 15 days of each other. Her mom was by way of Minnesota. Her dad was by way of Mississippi. So those thoughts, emotions, arrivals make sense to us, just so you have background context there. So, who were your parents to you, Val?
My parents were my everything. They were my foundation, my safety net, my covering, just a safe place. I had very dependable parents, and I just always knew that no matter what, I could depend on my parents.
That's it. Safety net, dependable.
My
Those are
foundation.
so. Is that what you would want people to know about them?
I would want people to know that they loved hard. They showed up. They were imperfect humans, but both of my parents were very good people that, not only showed up for me, they showed up for others as well. So I would really want people to know that about them.
That's probably how you were inspired to show up for so many people. I often call you healing heart. So, audience, when I say healing hearts, I'm really talking about Val. And from that, we know that she inherited that feature from her parents. So when you think of them now, what memory actually comes first?
The conversations we used to have, I had a very funny relationship with my parents. I could talk to them about anything. We joked a lot. My dad gave like the best wisdom, and my mom gave me like the best cuss outs I ever had. She would always cuss me out, and that that's just the memories of my parents that come to mind. Found and joy in my mom cussing me out and my dad giving me his little wisdom talk early in the morning.
Okay, you say early in the morning, so you had conversation, redirection with cuss outs, and that's a good thing. Hey, that's probably why you are a highly engaged friend. I would give you a gold star for your level of engagement with your friends and community, and just how you actually show up for others. How old did your parents live to be?
No. My dad was 88 and my mom was 77.
Oh wow, so
Yeah.
that's three scores and ten and some, which is certainly a blessing. Now go back to your dad. You said he would have y'all would have those AM conversations. So what time was he getting up? Like what time would these conversations be?
So my daddy was an early bird. He got up, I would say, between 4 and like 5 most days. And in the last several years before his passing, I would start work at 6 a.m. So not every day, but a majority of days, I would call him early in the morning to kind of get my day started because I was trying to wake up. And by the time I called him, I would call like between 5 and 5:30, and he's like, "I wash laundry, I cook breakfast." He's just done all of this stuff, and here I am, barely making it out of the bed to start work. But yes, he was an early bird, up early.
Oh, wow. That is wonderful. So he was up early in the morning getting things done. I think that's like one of the favorite sayings of one of the military branches. Like they've done so much early in the morning while most people were in bed. And you being at work at 6 a.m., kudos to you for that. That's a challenging perspective in itself. So with your parents passing kind of abruptly and so close together, can you recall what that shock felt like in your body and mind? Like,
Well, on March 12th,
okay.
that morning, I received a phone call from my sister letting me know that my mom was being taken to the hospital because she was non-responsive. So I spent the majority of that day at the hospital, with my mom, making sure that she was okay. By that evening, my mom was she was responsive again, so I left the hospital that evening, me and my sister, and I was actually at a nail appointment, and I got another phone call stating that my father was non-responsive. And then a couple hours after that, I got another phone call letting me know that my dad had passed away. So, in the midst of my mom being in the hospital, non-responsive, dad non-responsive that same day, and later dying that day, I feel like I have been kinda numb ever since that day.
Wow. So this all happened on the same day.
Correct. My father's funeral was, like, a week after that. I traveled to Mississippi to attend his funeral. I returned I don't remember the exact dates, but I was down there for about a week. I returned back to Minnesota on the night of March 25th. I got up, I worked that morning of March the 26th. I went to visit my mom that Wednesday evening as I did every Wednesday. Um, I left about, I'll say like 9 o'clock that night from visiting with my mom, and she passed later on that night on March 27th. So it was like the minute I got back from burying my dad, my mom died the very next day.
That is a lot. That is a lot. And with the feeling of numbness, had you ever felt anything close to it, or this was the first time you really felt so numb?
No, I've never felt anything like this at all. No.
Because it sounds like you had a good relationship, with your parents, especially by you being in Minnesota and your mom was there and your dad was in Mississippi. You worked across lines to keep those relationships open and alive. And, you spent time with your mom and your family. And that is great. And that is something to actually celebrate. Many of us don't have memories such as to even compare and think about with our families, particularly our parents. So as you have experienced this since last year in March, because now it's February 2026 and this happened March 2025. I'm sure you've needed rest. You've been discovering what your life looks like now. So what happens when the world is expecting you to return, but your heart isn't here yet? Like, what are you feeling now? Or how have expectations changed for you? Or what do you need more?
Um, to me, you learn how to put on a face. You learn how to perform while you're probably falling apart. You show up physically to places, but your spirit is behind. And you keep a smile on your face, but you're also doing a whole lot of crying. That's what it looks like for me.
Wow. I should have actually been jotting down with my ink pen. I hope the audience, kind of captured that. But in particular, showing up. You're showing up, but you're really not there.
That's correct. Yeah. And that is to this day.
So in terms What does rest look like or not look like for you?
Rest looked like scrolling in the middle of the night, 2 or 3, in the morning, trying to sleep and you really can't. It looks like quiet, just trying to have stillness, trying to have those quiet moments. And sometimes there is no rest.
There is no rest sometimes.
That is correct.
So you're not able, and I know it's not as simple as this. We're not talking about just put the phone on do not disturb to not be disturbed so you can get rest. It's no rest because of what you've experienced and what has happened. Is that correct?
That is correct. It is very hard to turn your brain off when you go from not ever stepping foot inside of a funeral home to having to go into 2 funeral homes within 2 weeks and see your parents in those caskets. There's thoughts from seeing your mother inside of a body bag, and a lot of those thoughts keep me up at night.
So, in terms of work, how has grief changed how you actually think about work?
Currently, I am not working. I have been on leave since this has taken place, but going through this, it made me just know that a lot of people are working while grieving because the grief doesn't expire when the bereavement leave is over. A lot of jobs give you 3 to 5 days of bereavement leave, and trauma doesn't it just doesn't end within a couple days. Different people are able to show up. Me, currently, I am not able to show up as my best self, and when I am working, I like to be my best self. I like to be productive. I like to get the job done, and currently, I know that I'm not capable of that.
Okay. So, it's good to hear that you know who you are with saying, currently, I wouldn't be my best self. But also, as humans, grief is not limited to 3 to 5 days according to bereavement leave policies or however employers actually have it. And it's good that you are in a situation where you have actually been on leave because we're almost at a year now since the passing of your parents. What do you wish employers understood about loss, or if you could change anything in workplaces all across the nation, what would that be to help other people that might be grieving?
For my employer personally,
Oh,
they have been very understanding. They have promoted, being on leave, taking care of your mental health, and just taking the time that you need, letting you know that grief looks different for everyone. Some people like to go to work to be distracted, what that works for others. So I just wish more people were like my employer who has been very understanding, even though it's almost been a year, with just understanding that grief looks different for everyone.
yes. Grief does look different for everyone. And you said that strategically. I've heard my mother say it. My brother passed abruptly in 2020. Before my grandmother passed in 2021, she buried 7 of her children out of 14, and grief looks different. Every person, different thought and emotion. As we look at what you're particularly known for, your strength is in healing hearts. And right now, you're in a space where your heart needs some healing. What does healing not mean for you?
It does not pretending I'm back to who I was before this happened in March. I can't pretend, I'm a totally different person now. It does not mean downplaying, what it looked like for those 15 days. And it does not mean closure. It just means, that I'm having to carry them differently and learning how to adjust to this new life without my parents. And healing definitely does not mean forgetting them because I still feel their presence, every day.
That's good. So what is supportive to you at this point where you at in life? What does supportive mean right now? I know you have a large community, you have children, you have a husband, your family is there, you have lots of friends, you have different networks. What is supportive right now? What does that look like or feel like?
Supportive to me is the people that have not tried to rush me back into who I used to be. It's people giving me space and, the people that have been very consistent in my life. I know a lot of times people show up when things happen and then they disappear when it's dark and when it's quiet. My system has been there and they continue to be there, and I'm very appreciative of that. So, yeah, that's what's been supportive to me.
That's a key point in not making it not making you be someone that you aren't right now and dismissing what has happened. So for someone that is grieving, what would you want them to quietly hear? How do you think what do you think they should hear or they need to hear? What could you whisper?
I would just like them to know that you're not weak for feeling the way that you do. I feel like some people feel as if they have to jump back into life and just, doing things that they once were, that you're not being dramatic. People just heal differently. You're just adjusting to an essence that has changed your life. It changes everything and it's going to take time. A lot of times you hear people say things like, your parents would want you to go on. Your parents would want you to be at work. Your parents would want you to do certain things. And that's not necessarily true. But I feel like that's why people feel like they have to be strong and they have to put on this front when they're really not okay. And I just want people to know it's okay to not be okay and it's okay to seek help.
That's that's important to hear you say. And seeking help looks different for different people. And there are ways, I guess, to look for help, find help, and actually seek the right help. So what do you think? What has helped you get through like your hardest days or what helps you get through?
I am in therapy every week. And I just feel like I was actually in therapy before my parents died. So I feel like being in therapy before made it easier not having to find a therapist during that time. So just being in therapy and just remembering that, because my parent died, my love for them did not have to end. It's still okay to talk about them. It's still okay to speak about them. And that's just what's been getting me through.
That is beautiful and that resonates in our conversation today with you speaking about your parents and what they instilled in you and some of your good moments with them. As we turn our focus to hope and looking forward, what does healing look like for you in your next season? What do you feel like it looks like?
I feel like in my next season, I would probably, and I'm hoping, come out of this a stronger person. I am definitely not there yet, but I do feel like there is light at the end of this very dark tunnel, and I feel like I will be healed and just a stronger person in general.
That is good. And what is one thing that you would want every listener to remember today from our conversation?
I want, I kind of want people to know that it's okay to not say anything if you don't know what to say. And people use certain terms, and for me, they're not helpful. And this is just me on my personal journey. Things like, at least they lived a long life. Everything happens for a reason. I just don't like those terms on my personal journey because I find no comfort in knowing that my parents lived a long life. I am very well aware of that. Everything happens for a reason. I don't find any comfort in that either. I just would feel like sometimes people shouldn't just say anything if you don't know what to say.
That that
because functioning is not the same as being okay.
mm, wow. And I will say, I heard that like when my brother passed, I told one of his friends because my thought was my brother lived 31 good years. And I told one of his friends, I was like, well, cherish the memories. You know what the guy told me? He said, Forte, what about new memories with Bo? And I was like, wow. He said, we have old memories, but I wanted to make new memories. And that put me in a different perspective. So that's interesting. I do think sometimes we don't know what to say. And that was certainly a very teachable moment with you saying that. One thing I've always heard, and it kind of jumps out at me, well, if you need some help, call me or let me know.
Yeah.
I don't understand that one. Like I'm in a space of, grieving. I don't know when a moment might hit me. And I'm not just gonna think to call you. Or, if you want something to eat or they're always like, call me. And I'm like, how am I going to call you when I'm trying to navigate this new
I,
space?
I agree. And some of these things that I don't like, I have been guilty of myself in the past. So I think it's a
Hmm.
learning journey as we go. But
Yeah.
yeah, definitely if someone has lost someone or anything like that, I'm sure it's something that they need. And I feel like at that point you should just do. Because in most
Mhm.
cases, people that are going through are not gonna call you when they need something because they got enough going on. They're not trying to be a burden or anything like that. So yeah, and I would just say again, I feel like if people don't know what to say, it's okay to, not say anything or I'm praying for you. That's always appropriate, you know?
Mhm.
When people are going through, they can always use prayers, but just some of the other things that you hear along the way, it's no comfort in those things.
And you are helping us by saying that, and I hope that our audience, actually hears that too. I think we mean well as humans, but it doesn't sit when we're in that space. So thank you for enlightening us with that, especially as we think about what you've experienced, and even with you being here today. I will say from watching you through elementary school, you've always been a very expressive person. And I would just like to give kudos to working with you in the communications club at Aliceville High School when our librarian came with the vision for us to sit down, stay after school and record the news so that information could be told about what was happening. And in 2026, always go back to that seed that librarian sowed with us. And I'm sure that has probably helped us get through today because what you just said and discussed and navigated, that would be even more challenging. And if you had not been in good conversation with your parents, you wouldn't be able to, I think, share as much. Or if they hadn't sowed a seed of you being a caring person. So that is how I kind of came up with that. And I echo your sentiments of actually healing hearts. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners, or how are you feeling right now? Or can we just kind of cheer that we actually made it through a very tough conversation? Is there anything else that is on your mind at this point?
No, we can cheer that we made it through a tough conversation. Thank you for having me. I will say for, those of us that are on this healing journey, just know that it doesn't have to look the same for everyone.
Correct. It doesn't have to look the same for everyone. And I appreciate you from coming by way of Minnesota. When we look at Minnesota as a state, if you look at some facts and figures, it is one of the happiest states. And I know that you are a mom, and I'm proud to say, as an educator, I've kind of looked at the ACT and SAT scores. So that gives me great hope for the future. And as your family grows and your children grow throughout life, that it's one of the top performing states. So I hope that you will find great joy in continuing to harvest and do good things in Minnesota and in your community. And guess what? What we've come to realize that reinvention is not starting over. It's simply moving forward. I'm your host, Forte, and this is the Forte Effect.